I was born the same year YouTube started.
All right, so here we are.
The first A24 director under the age of 30.
A kid in high school uploaded a short film onto YouTube.
And it didn't do great for like the first 2 days, and then somehow some shadow figure behind the scenes pulled a lever or something.
Just the way that first video took off is, I don't know how that happened.
Since then, that idea has evolved into A24's highest grossing movie ever.
But it was very much coming from a place of scratching the itch of why does this picture make my brain feel so strange? Like a sort of purgatory or a hell myth, force of nature that you can't negotiate with.
I would ask to be escorted away when we had breaks in between takes. The more time you spend in there, the more unhinged you feel.
Because reality broke. So you may end up in the back rooms.
I remember probably by around the time I was like 9 or so, I had the term filmmaker was in my brain enough that I was like, I want to make movies, that's cool. I eventually got like an old digicam, and I would like go and do a little stop motion animation with Lego, and simultaneously watching a lot of VFX driven work on YouTube, the Order Crew sort of stuff. It was around like the beginning of middle school that's when I was around trying out After Effects for the first time, and was like doing a bunch of tutorials, and then I pirated way too much software and got a bunch of viruses.
For the most part, my childhood was just comprised of creating stuff, and the bulk of my creative time was expressed through drawing and sandbox games. Fourth grade, I started doing the YouTube videos, low-key Minecraft gaming stuff, but then eventually it spiraled into grabbing a camera, telling a story, looking up how to make short film on YouTube. It's been the thing I've been doing my whole life. My dad is in the VFX industry on the game side of things.
Around the time my parents separated and he had his own place for a little bit, he's an eccentric guy and he decorated the interior of this house he was renting with red curtains. It was a zigzag carpet. It was the Twin Peaks sort of dreamscape, so I sort of spent a lot of time growing up in that world.
The popular photo was taken back in 2003, but it wasn't until the internet discovered it and gave it a life of its own nearly 16 years later.
In Oshkosh, a place that looks ordinary, just a hobby store, a single photo taken during renovations at what used to be a furniture store became the seed of Backrooms.
So the Backrooms originated essentially as sort of the combination of two 4chan posts. Initially, there was this image that was posted to the board. That was paired by another user with a caption basically outlining the concept of if you no-clip, which is a video game or just like a computer design term, out of reality in the wrong places, you'll end up in the backrooms, which is just these infinite, dingy, yellow office spaces. If you like leave reality behind, there's something lying underneath it that is not meant for you, that is not meant for people, but it's sort of like the recycled parts of the world in some way. You know, wandering around there, it's, you know, the fear comes from you're gonna go crazy at some point. There's nothing to grapple onto it. When I first saw that image, I was 13.
That screenshot floated around as a meme around May of 2019, and I was in middle school. Didn't see it and immediately go, whoa, I need to make a series and a movie, and then I moved on, and everyone else moved on, and we stopped caring about the Backrooms for the most part.
While the rest of the internet moved on, Kane was still sorting out the pieces a ruptured childhood left behind, something that quietly shaped everything he would create.
I think the biggest impact on my life from that was sort of the realization that upon seeing my parents' marriage, which seems like a solid thing that couldn't ever change, seeing that just suddenly stop existing and just split apart into something where neither of my parents knew exactly where they were going from there, that sort of made me realize that there isn't an inherent direction to anything. It led to a lot of existential crises around that time as well, thinking about death a lot. And I mean, of course, everyone goes through that phase somewhere in life, but I got that at like 7 because it's something I think everyone has to face, and it can be very hard to get comfortable with that.
It's hard to overstate how important one's parents are in their development as a person, but my mom's a therapist and my dad has been like, you know, going between programming and VFX work in the game industry.
So around that time, I had PlayStation 3 and I was very into Minecraft, and there was like this game, Little Big Planet. These are sandbox games where you can like get a lot of create functions, and so I was exploring technically a 3D program oriented as a game.
That's all I've wanted to do, and it's just sort of been the same me, just experimenting with slowly better and better technology, like graduating from iMovie and finally plateaued at Premiere, After Effects, and Blender.
Schools are closed for at least the next 2 weeks.
It was the beginning of the pandemic. I was 14. I got into Blender. I'm a big fan of the Valve properties like Portal and Half-Life, and those majorly informed a lot of my creative sensibilities. That was around the time Half-Life Alyx was coming out, and I wanted to do fan art for that. and that got me like really motivated to figure some stuff out in Blender. And by 2021, I had gotten back into Attack on Titan, which is, you know, obviously a pretty big property around the world. And I was basically adapting set pieces from that into found footage, but it was in like 1930s, 1940s war, like film footage of like set pieces inside that world. So it was an anime and manga, and what I was doing was like a series of these videos. Well, I did one thinking it was going to be one, but then people lost their minds over it, so I started doing more. The first one did like 10 million views, and like the next one did like another 10 million. It kept going big, and my channel I think got 200,000 subscribers from that. I did that for all of 2021, and like I was riding a high with it. Like that was really exciting. But then I got fatigued by it, and because I used up all the plot points in the series that I could adapt, and people wanted more still, and I was kind of like, okay, well, I kind of want to do other things now.
I just came across one of the Backrooms images again. I thought it was neat because I love environmental horror. I'm very obsessed with the look and feel of spaces, especially hostile spaces, just ones that feel like they don't really make sense. And I wanted to try to create my own liminal space in Blender. So I did a test. It was in the Backrooms. That's the most prominent liminal space out there. It was a shot of a guy rounding a corner and a chair hits the wall. That's actually a clip around the end of the actual full Backrooms video.
Kind of talking about a building ghost story.
I made environments that felt true to what the Backrooms wanted to be and were trying to be, and tried to evoke the feeling of this place, but in a video form rather than imagery. I didn't even like the opening thing. I filmed after I did everything else when I was like, it's like, okay, well, to make this a proper film, what's a way in? Then it got posted, and it didn't do great for like the first 2 days, and then because it started getting in the feeds of certain reaction YouTubers, and then that made it like go nuts.
And I was trying to find something that like truly no one else had done, and I was trying to take it to a level of production quality that on top of no one else having done it, I was trying to do it right the first time.
Well, I mean, I put out those shorts in January of 2022. The first short went out in January 7th. It was like less than a month later that I started getting my first emails from anyone in the industry.
I had no interaction with the film industry at that point. I was 16 at the time. I did get management around the time because, you know, management firms were some of the people reaching out at the time. So I got that and a lawyer.
I was unable to be here for senior year, regrettably, because of having to say thank God with, you know, the traction on this film. So
eventually we sorted out, you know, a partnership with Atomic Monster in 21 Laps.
We definitely saw the potential that you have to kind of take this project and make it something bigger, right? Like, you know, kind of break it into the feature world. Between, you know, us at Atomic Monster and 21 Labs, we're like, let's collaborate.
It was like end of 2022, around October, that we pitched to A24, and we pitched to a handful of studios.
I'm very happy with the people we landed with A24. They are very generous with the amount of creative control they want to give me on this project.
The budget was about 10 million. I don't know what the producers were thinking. They've done nothing but really just support the vision that I've tried to put forward with this, and they're definitely trying to just replicate what happened on YouTube.
I think there is a special quality to keeping it purely found footage, but the story I'm telling is sort of branches outside of, and it becomes a lot more personal and conceptual in a lot of ways, and that's just not something that I'll be able to pull off with found footage.
We had a huge set of this, you know, and we were wandering around, getting lost, trying to figure our way through it. It was great to have it as a physical space.
All the sets I made in Blender, and then I handed over. I worked with the art department, and we just built a full 3D replica of exactly what was in Blender. So like all the sets in the film exist.
It was incredibly surreal.
It's like 30,000 square feet of Backrooms.
All the lighting was configured properly when I stepped in for the first time, and it just hit me how identical it felt in person to being, you know, inside one of those scenes that I've been staring at for years.
We did everything up in Vancouver, British Columbia. We had like 4 sound stages in this one building, which is where our production office was. So everything we were doing was in this one building. We filled 4 of them with pretty much wall-to-wall sets.
That's probably the one we referenced the most visually and tonally. Certainly on a cinematography front and an acoustic front, we definitely went to it quite a lot. The Portal games is something that's been in my brain for so long. I guess just in general, it's probably obvious how and why this connects to Backrooms. You can see these murals on the wall of, like, you can clearly see traces of another human being in this place. Backrooms is responding to, you know, the anxieties around the level of urbanization and industrialization and corner cutting we're at right now, where so much information, but it means so little to most people. We wanted a tranquility to everything, cool tranquility that feels like culture that's soothing itself, very like self-assured in that way, but it is inherently commercial. It's that, but with a price tag on it. Kind of the same as like Mary's self-help book. It's like, it's there and it's exercising thoughtfulness and peace, but it's also totally a commodity that doesn't understand itself at all.
Spaces soak up so much diffused memories over time, and you just get the distilled emotions of it all at once when you return to a space. So to see something that's generic, you get a sort of wide range of feelings you might have associated with a place like that in childhood. I think that's kind of like where a lot of the intrigue comes from. And then especially the more surreal aspects, like playing into dream logic and places you've seen in dreams.
When Kane called to ask me to do that role, we had long conversations about the subconscious. He was also very into like quantum physics and had gone into those rabbit holes himself. And I was very fascinated by how some people imagining this world behind our world. And it's so impossible to understand, to try to make sense of what we live in, but in a kind of distorted way.
So I was skeptical at first of the transition from these short films into a movie with a real set and with characters. But talking to Kane, I felt I really wanted to join his vision, and I was very intrigued by how it is a horror movie genre, but it has so many layers of psychology and existential elements in there.
We talked about as much as we could to understand the world, and sometimes on set, especially the dinner scene in the middle of the movie, it is truly one of the most absurd scenes I've ever been in.
The mission with this project was to approach it from a hard sci-fi human drama perspective. Working at this MRI startup in 1990, and you just burn a hole through the wall completely by accident, pretty much, in the basement of their office.
Backrooms is kind of like a large version of sort of what happens when you stare at a blank wall for too long and you start to see your own mind kind of projected before you there in a very physical kind of way, an echo chamber of one's own character.
I was so struck by how lonely I felt because of how many people that had seen it, and I was not sure what they saw, if they saw the same as me, and I couldn't articulate what it was or understand exactly what it was that I felt.
Just unsettling, eerie, monotonous dread and sort of emptiness wandering through this space without an exit. Trying to find that kind of psychological connective tissue is one of the things that I think has been the most fascinating. You definitely end up with the belief that these things are symbiotic in a sense. For Clark's journey, he kind of starts to understand it and then harmonizes his own chaotic psychology with what he needs from the Backrooms and potentially what the Backrooms needs from him.
Psychosis, but still oddly calm.
Talking to Kane about the Backrooms is kind of like being in a quantum physics class.
What I found so scary, like I love architecture that has soul and detail, and movies that takes in kind, like every art form that has space for the audience. And this world is the opposite. It's like the image of an affected world. Like everything's made simple to make it cheaper. It's a nightmare for me. And also the character really trying to figure out her own life and going in circles, trying to help other people, not getting out of her own loops, and actually getting caught in both that really horrible space, but also going in circles within herself.
Playing into like a fear of a monoculture, being in this bland, mass-produced office industrial environment that goes on in all directions forever.
Kane Parsons was 20 when we shot this, and I was surprised by how surgical he was as a director.
Last minute little things like staying up and like adjusting, like adding yellow caps to the fan, adding a little bit of extra detail.
Any kind of guidance you needed, he could give you, and yeah, I found that inspiring and surprising. There was nothing that kind of betrayed his age.
Kane Parsons.
I always knew that there was going to be more to it than simply YouTube videos.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't feel like this huge colossal shift has happened since everything is blown up. I'm just doing what I've always done.
Backrooms, the #1 movie in the world.
If you can take something that does exist and then find a way to subvert it in a meaningfully interesting way, because you can start from a place of, if describing it somehow, you can argue that it is different than anything that exists out there, then at the very least, you've made something new and unique.
The first movie does very well. The ideal scenario, creatively, would be to finish it off with like a 9-episode limited series.
You don't need to be a seasoned professional to get into this line of work. You can make something genuinely engaging at pretty much any age.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to stay tuned for what's coming. Leave a comment on what film you'd like to see me do a deep dive on next.